now. All right, let's get this document going. All right. Oh, it'd be helpful if I said the right date today. Okay, let's get the show on the road. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, January 22nd, 2021. Today, we're talking about some new software updates that are coming our way, iPhone and MacBook rumors, of course, because this is the iMore show. Joining me, as always, is iMore contributor Karen Freeman. Hiya, Karen.
Hello.
And joining us today as well is our special guest, our own newsman extraordinaire, Stephen Warwick. Stephen, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So wanted to have you on, Stephen, because this really seemed to kick off rumor season. Happy January.
There's been a lot of news.
Yeah, it's and it's a lot of news that we don't actually have any solid data on just yet, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of 2, 3, 5 year reports. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got some rumors about the Apple car that was maybe gonna go to Hyundai and then Kia. But the stuff we're going to talk about today, some iPhone stuff and MacBook related stuff. But first, I want to talk about stuff that we know a little more about, and that's software. It's not very exciting software. It's iOS 14.4, watchOS 7.3, iPadOS 14.4, tvOS 14.4, and macOS 11.2. They all got their release candidates this week in the last day or two.
Woo.
I've said this before, time is an illusion, so I don't actually remember if it was the last day or two. But yeah, these aren't going to be these are probably going to be coming next week or the week after. Kind of minor software updates to the QR code reading on iPhone, things like that. But just, keep your update windows or your update screens open in the next couple of weeks, because that's coming. The one that's really sort of, I guess, maybe technically the most interesting for some people is going to be this new Unity. We're getting a new watch face on watchOS 7.3. It's the Unity face, and this is a face based on the Unity, the Pan-African flag, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
the Pan-African flag. So there's the new face has 3 different color combos, which I'm going to butcher this, but I'll try. So there's black and gray, red, black and green, and red, black and yellow. And each of those colors on the flag represents something different, kind of within the African continent.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we heard a little bit something about the Unity theme this week when it comes to African unity specifically, and I think this is just a supposed to be a further celebration of that.
Yeah.
So
would you like to know what the colors mean?
I would like to know what the colors mean.
So there's the red. So I'm just reading this verbatim from the article. If you guys want to check this out, we've got reds that represents the blood that unites. This says that the people of the African diaspora that was shed for their liberation. Black is for the people whose lives are affirmed by the flag. And then green is a symbol of the vibrant natural wealth of Africa, the motherland. So yeah, and even they look fantastic, I think. I really, really like these.
Yeah, bold. I think.
Yeah,
bold, and huge new watch faces aren't generally a big deal, but it's one of those nice things that Apple does.
It's a big deal to me. I'm very into watch faces.
Yeah.
I think we should have a lot more of them. In fact, I think they should be opened up to third-party developers.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion. But
come on, watchOS 8. Come on.
Yeah,
and we are talking about that sort of stuff already. We don't have a lot of data, but we already have some news that iOS 15, which it's time to start thinking about that.
WWDC is like 5 months away,
right? That can't be right, but it is. but iOS 15 might be finally set to ditch some of the older devices. Stephen, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this came out yesterday, I believe, and kind of as is the case, I guess, all the time with software, which moves very quickly as opposed to hardware, which changes once a year if you're lucky. There are kind of always devices at the end that get sort of chopped off. So we're sort of hearing, this is from a report from iPhone Soft, who I believe have correctly predicted this before. The iOS 15 will see the end to support for the iPhone SE. So that's the original SE from 2016, not the one that was just released last year. It's the iPhone SE, the iPhone 6S, and I'm guessing the 6S Plus. There was a 6S Plus, right?
Yeah.
I didn't just make that up in my head.
There was.
6S Plus, and then also the iPad Mini 4, the iPad Air 2, and the iPad 5. So sounds like a lot, but these are, I guess, kind of 4-5-year-old devices. 5
and 6-year-old, 5.5-year-old devices.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to hold on to devices for this many years, more power to you. That's fantastic. But you can't expect that you're going to keep being able to update the software.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, Karen, because one of the things we saw, it was either earlier this week or later last week, Apple actually issued, I think it was iOS 12.5.1 for older devices that couldn't update to iOS 13 or 14. So it's not like you're going to be totally bereft of software updates. You'll probably get iOS 14 I'm going to guess 6.1 somewhere down the line with some kind of security update. And so you won't be totally without support.
I think it's pretty generous of Apple to do that, really. How many other companies continue supporting devices that old?
Yeah. And it's not like your device will just stop working the day the
new iOS
15 comes out. And there's still plenty of longevity. I suppose that probably any of the concerns would be, I guess, security-based and things like that. But Joe, like you said, Apple will keep pushing out kind of iOS 14 software as they've done with kind of previous versions, even once iOS 15. If it's called iOS 15.
Right. And it's not like Apple's taking anything away. You're just not going to get the new features, which, of course, on a 5-year-old device, you're not going to get the new features.
Yeah, it's not like a desktop PC where you can like pull out a part and put in a new one.
I know people get so angry when their device isn't supported anymore, but I don't think it's totally reasonable.
I don't think it's really reasonable to scream planned obsolescence about a 5-year-old device no longer getting software updates.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
And that's something I've always been really pleased about as an Apple customer is like, I can, I update my phone every year because I'm me. That's what I do. But I could reasonably hold on to this iPhone 12 Pro for years to come, 3 or 4 years if I wanted to.
Well, yeah, I guess going by this timeline, when did you get your iPhone 12 Pro? End of last year?
Well, yeah, October. October.
So if you stick to this timeline, it would in theory be good until 2025, 26.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe Scotland will be out of lockdown by then. Who knows? We'll see.
Maybe we'll all be able to walk around and say hi to each other.
We'll all be living on the moon.
Maybe we will have done an iMore show live and in person together at some point. Maybe we'll be there. But yeah, like I have it's a 7-year-old MacBook Pro that still works pretty well. The newer features it doesn't get. It's got a very old processor. The graphics aren't up to snuff in any sense of the word, but it works and it does its job. It does what I need it to do for the most part every day.
Yeah. No, Joe,
the only problem is going to be is if you need a repair, it might be challenging.
Mm-hmm. I'm exactly the same as you. I have I think it's a late 2013 MacBook Pro that actually I got while I worked at Apple. And that served literally until, I guess, the most recent macOS came out and I tried to update it. And that was the first time I'd used it and be like, you cannot cope anymore. Like this is done. But yeah, 7 years from a MacBook and stuff. And 5 or 6 for a phone I think is seriously impressive, especially when you compare it to kind of the other vendors going about like your Samsungs and your Huawei's and stuff. Like I don't think you'd get like that kind of length of kind of software update coverage. So I think a lot of people kind of on that end would would kill for even like 4 years of support. So 5 or 6, I don't think there's too much to be upset about, really.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the last Windows laptop I owned. I don't think I could have gotten 4 years out of that one. It was it was a Windows Vista machine, so it's not that surprising, but yeah. So speaking about speculation and things that are coming down the road, let's talk a little bit about the iPhone 12s/13, whatever it's going to be called. It doesn't really matter. That was one of the big rumors this week is it's not going to be the iPhone 13. It's going to be the iPhone 12s.
Yeah,
maybe
it might never be the iPhone 13. I think is possibly the bigger news. Like Apple does S releases, has done previously. There was it was the 10s most recently.
Yeah,
we had, and the 10s Max. But yeah, Mark Gurman came out last week and sort of said internally, Apple engineers kind of would consider this to be an S update, just because I would assume there's probably not going to be any kind of major form factor upgrade or anything like that. 5G kind of on by Apple's reckoning was a big update. So by comparison, this year it does kind of sound like a 12S update. And John Prosser has since come out and said, yes, that is kind of what is happening, what he's been told as well. So lots of rumblings in that direction of 12S rather than 13.
And so in that sort of vein, the S updates often have significant internal upgrades. One of the ones that we're hearing about this week is the possibility of the iPhone 12 Pro Max's standard camera sensor, the sensor shift sensor, coming to the entire iPhone line this year, which that's exciting.
I think we kind of heard about last year when we first sort of learned that the iPhone 12s/13 would be a similar configuration to this year's lineup. So 4 devices, 3 sizes. One of the only features that was offered was, the camera from the 12 Pro Max is going into the entire lineup next year. So that differentiating factor where you have, the 12 Pro Max is the biggest phone, but it also has the best camera. That camera hopefully will be coming to the whole lineup this year and kind of opening up that. And maybe the 13 or the 12S Pro Max will get its own extra upgrades to kind of keep that differentiation.
Yeah. It's supposed to get the sensor, but it's not going to get the 3 camera module. The non-pro phones are still going to be have 2.
The report, at least that we had most recently, is that the lower end, so the mini and the regular iPhone, will still have the dual camera configuration, but with the kind of beefed up lens from the Max.
I really want that third camera lens, the telephoto. I miss it a lot.
What you need, Karen, is a Pro Mini.
It is what I need.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I don't think Apple's going that way. I don't think the Mini's it's doing that great, is it?
No, we did have some news this week about that, where it looks like Mini production has been cut in favor of 12 Pro production.
Right.
Is that right, Stephen?
So I'm afraid Apple's going to take that as, nobody wants little phones. But maybe if they had released a Pro Mini, it would have done better.
Yeah, this is actually something I wonder. And okay, so the first people to buy new iPhones, like every year, are going to be the people who are the enthusiasts. Like we're going to go in as early as we can, and some people are going to have their contracts or their eligibility for the new phone come up at the same time the new phone is released, enthusiast or not. That's just how it happens. And plus, the iPhone is always well publicized whenever a new one comes out. But a lot of people are going to wait for when their contract comes around. And so I wonder if, and this is something I think we saw with the iPhone XR, do you think this might be the case where, demand increases over time, where popularity increases over time? I don't think we're going to be looking at a situation like we had with the XR. Like the year of the XR, it was the single most popular phone, or at least the most popular iPhone. And I don't think we're looking at that situation with the Mini, but do we think we could see the Mini's fortunes improve up until like September or October?
I think a little bit. I think the reason that the 10R and also the 11, not Pro, but the 11 were so popular was because you were getting almost everything that you could want on the flagship phone, but at a lower price point. So I think a lot of quote unquote regular people, when they went to buy a phone, that's what they got, whether it was right when it came out or 6 months later.
Yeah.
But with the mini's kind of like as one of our viewers pointed out, the mini is a niche product. Not everybody wants a little tiny phone. A lot of people don't, but
which is unfortunate.
It's not just the features, is it? It's the size, which I think is the only reservation I have about kind of the news that the mini isn't doing as well as maybe. I don't want to say as Apple has hoped, because I've seen kind of talk from analysts, like I know Neil Seibert has said that if Apple sells, like if the kind of the iPhone 12 share for the mini is between kind of 5 and 10%, that's a success for Apple. And I think as long as it's profitable, they'll keep selling it. But the only reservation I have is that the mini came out after the 6.1 inch iPhone 12 devices. Like there was a whole month delay.
Yeah.
But that is also true of the Pro Max, which by all accounts I think is doing quite well. So I think you're right. It is kind of a real niche device, and you've got to, you either want that size or you don't. And because there aren't any, is there any feature crossover between the mini and the regular 12 that you're losing out on? I don't think so.
No, just screen size
and battery. I think the battery might be
just I guess by proxy of the device's size. And so
battery's not great.
The only thing you would, if you were an Apple Store employee or you work in a phone shop and you're trying to sell one, is literally just like it's the size. And with the size, it's you either like it or you don't. So that it's not maybe like the Pro and the Pro Max where it's like, okay, well, you maybe want the better camera as well as the increased size and stuff. So yeah, it's a tough one. But I wonder if maybe that month lag has a little bit to do with it. But yeah, by all accounts, Apple has shifted 2 million units of production away from the iPhone 12 mini to the iPhone 12 Pro to try and keep up with demand. It may just be indicative of how popular the 12 Pro is. It might not kind of speak so much to how the iPhone 12 mini is doing, but I think that is the one that they seem to have offset in favor of the 12 Pro. Probably.
So Stephen, do we have any indication of how the standard iPhone 12 is doing compared to, say, the Pro? Because I hear a lot of talk about the iPhone 12 Pro in terms of metrics and analytics and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I want to say, let me find the report because I don't want to butcher it when I tell you. Basically, the iPhone 12 Pro and like the 12 Pro Max and the regular 12 are all doing really well. So the story came out this week that the iPhone 12 accounted for 56% of all iPhone sales during the first quarter, and it wasn't even available for all of that quarter. And I want to say the 12 Pro and the 12, just the regular 12, account for 17% each of that portion of iPhone. So 100% of that, 56%. Yeah, you've got the 17% 12 and the 17% 12 Pro. So they're both doing really well by comparison. And sort of the narrative the whole way through since the phone was released was Apple can't keep up with 12 Pro demand. iPhone 12 mini has been a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah. I think if you are a fan of the mini and maybe you wanted to, especially if you like wanted to skip the first generation mini and see how the second one ends up, I don't think you have to have anything to worry about this year. I'm pretty confident that there will be a 13 or 12S mini or whatever it's going to be named. But yeah, I wish people were more into it. I think if more people were into the smaller phone, there would be a better chance of being a Pro Mini, which Karen, I also want. That would be my ideal phone. 3 cameras, small phone. I want it.
Chris in the chat makes a good point as well. The battery is, because it's such a small phone, it is a big trade-off in battery life because of it just the phone is smaller. So
it doesn't last all day.
Yeah.
I have to charge it throughout the day, which is kind of pathetic, really. I mean, I'm home all day, so it doesn't matter now, but it'll matter eventually.
Yeah, that's for me. Like I went from the 10S to the 12 Pro, and possibly like one of the biggest kind of experience upgrades for me is not having to charge my phone every day. Or if I do have to charge it, I charge it at the end of each night. Whereas when I have my 10S, like you with the 12 mini, I would get to 5-6 o'clock in the evening, and then it would be back on the charger for a bit until bedtime, and then it would charge again overnight and stuff. So yeah. And Stephen again is right, Joe, to your comment about a 12 Pro Mini, is that if we pack even more features into a phone with an already undersized battery, then yeah.
I want it all though. I want it all, and I want it now.
Just leave it plugged in, I think would be the answer.
Okay,
to that.
Freddie Mercury. I want it all and I want it now.
Yeah, take the battery out.
But yeah, actually that is something worth talking about is, the Pro has, I think it's 2 gigabytes additional memory over the standard iPhone. The iPhone 12 and 12 mini have 4, and the Pro models have 6. And I think this is right. The more RAM you have in a device, the more power it draws.
That sounds like
yeah.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yeah, that sounds like something Apple would be involved in. Yeah.
So going on to more rumors continuing on about the iPhone 13 12s. I'm going to keep saying 13 just because why S? Why really? It doesn't actually matter.
I think we've all spent like 4 or 5 months calling it the iPhone 13. So to have that taken away from us is very, very difficult to.
I can't cope.
It's got to take some time to come to terms with. So.
Well, if you say 13, people will know what you mean.
Exactly.
If you have to change the name later, we'll change
the
it later.
next one.
iPhone 2021.
Yeah, let's just go with that, Apple. iPhone 2021. It sounds
that's not going to work either.
I mean, maybe next year. Like if that report is to be believed from what John says, that not only is this year the 12s, but that there will never be an iPhone 13 because of the negative cultural connotations, I believe is how he put it, of the number 13.
Yeah.
Apple skipped numbers before.
Yeah.
Skipped the 9.
There's no 9.
And next year would be the 15th anniversary of the iPhone, right? Yeah, 2007 to 2022. That's 15.
Oh my God, yes. But yeah, not only was there no iPhone 9, there was no iPhone 2. They didn't call it the iPhone 2. Technically, there wasn't a 3. They had iPhone, they had 3G, then they had 3GS, and they had 4.
Yeah. So the numbers are boggled before we even started. So
it's like, whose line is it anyway? Everything's made up and the points don't matter.
Mm-hmm. Or Windows, if you're into that.
Or Windows, because there was no Windows 9 either.
No.
So another report this week about the iPhone 13. We may finally be getting a smaller notch. And that's thanks to it says a redesigned Face ID system.
Yeah.
Woo.
Stephen, what's this all about?
So I want to say, so the new design, do you remember the keynotes when they introduced Face ID and you've got the notch and you've got like all the different kind of components that go into that? So the report is that there's the new design of the notch will have, they're called the RX, TX, and Flood Illuminator all into the same camera module, which will, if you think of the notch in portrait, the notch is going to get narrower. But this way, not shorter as in that way. So it will be the same kind of protrusion like down into your screen, but there will be more space either side, hopefully.
So we're not talking about a Pixel 3 XL situation where it's just like a bathtub deep into the screen.
No. So now narrower, not shorter. That's the one.
What an ugly phone that was.
I think I would have cared a lot more about the smaller notch when the notch was first introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm so used to it, I don't even notice the notch anymore.
It's sort of like, more screen space is great, I guess, except it's at the the top of the phone where what I view things constantly. No, I think what's going to get me excited is if and when they can eventually get rid of the notch. Like if they can manage to put the Face ID stuff behind the sensor, now that's going to be something to talk about.
Yeah.
Or behind the screen, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no notch would be news. I just don't feel like a smaller notch is that exciting.
Karen, would you take a hole punch notch over no notch? because there was like a concept or like a render of an iPad mini that was going around this week that showed probably a fake like iPad mini, but with like a tiny just hole punch camera right in the top. So you not show under the screen rather than
I don't know that I would love the hole punch either. I mean, it's fine. It's like I said, I don't mind the notch anymore. So if they want to go to a smaller notch or a hole punch or whatever, that's fine. But until it's completely gone, it's not going to really make a difference to me. But your mileage may vary.
For me, it's kind of like foldables. I know a lot of people are excited about foldables. A lot of our colleagues are excited about foldables, but to me, foldables will only be truly exciting when they're like the Westworld level of when it's folded up, it's the thickness of a regular phone. And then when you open it up, it gets super thin and you can't see the crease.
Yeah, it would have to be rendered really, really well for it to be exciting for me.
Yeah.
Where we're at now is not.
Yeah, it's just not
great.
Yeah. And so we're also supposed to be getting theoretically Touch ID on this phone under the screen. Is this what I'm hearing?
Yes, I believe so. So yeah, there's sort of rumors abound that Touch ID is making a comeback. John Prosser has kind of talked about this a lot in his videos because when Apple took Touch ID away and gave us Face ID, it was marketed as, a better, more secure solution. So for Apple to reintroduce Touch ID would sort of undermine kind of all that messaging that's gone before. But now with the pandemic and, we're all wearing masks, covering our faces, that's kind of the perfect excuse for Apple to be like, hey, we put Touch ID back in because, we know it's not always convenient for you to use your face to unlock your phone. And Apple put Touch ID back in the most recent iPad Air, but in the top button. But yeah, it sounds like the iPhone 12, the 12S will be Touch ID integrated under the screen as like a fingerprint scanner. But
yeah, but it's not going to be a big ugly dot, is it?
No, you can't see it. It's invisible.
Okay,
I got to use a Huawei P40 Pro a few months back, just for a few weeks, and that has Touch ID.
But then how do you know where to put your finger?
Has a fingerprint scanner. It's just when you unlock the phone, well, on the Huawei that I had anyway, when you unlock the phone, you get an icon with like a fingerprint to kind of show you where it's like a virtual button. And you put it on and there's like haptic feedback as well, which is, and it worked fantastic on that. That was definitely a preferable experience to just Face ID on the iPhone. I found myself using just the Touch ID. I keep talking about Touch ID, but it's Huawei. I kept using the fingerprint scanner all the time to unlock it rather than the face because it just seems kind of so much more reliable. So yeah.
I think it's good to have both. When we first started using Face ID, it was fine, but I would find like if I'm in bed and my phone's on my nightstand, I just kind of want to peek at it, but I don't want to like pick the whole phone up and stick it in my face. I just kind of want to like touch it and just check, something real quick. Yeah. So I missed it even then. This was before the pandemic, but now with the pandemic, it is you have to definitely punch in your passcode every single time. So
yeah,
having both would be ideal, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think so. Dulva in the chat brings up an interesting point. You could put it in the button on either side of the phone or switch the sides of the phone. And this is one of the advantages I think of putting it in the screen. So on the iPad, it's different because you have to reach up with one of your hands to get that. But on the iPhone, I think everybody has a hand that they usually use for their iPhone when they're using it one-handed. I hold my iPhone in my left hand. And so having the button on set, like matching my right finger to a Touch ID here on the sleep wake button would be great for me. But for anybody who holds it in the right hand, it could be the thumb. But if they prefer to reach with their forefinger, it's going to be a problem. I think putting it on the screen is a great way for anybody. It makes it easier to reach. You don't have to, maneuver around your phone.
Well, and you're putting your finger there anyway to swipe up. So
yeah,
exactly,
for sure.
You don't have a whole new muscle memory thing.
Yeah, I would, and that's actually a great point, Karen. I wouldn't be surprised if this fingerprint, the fingerprint sensor comes out and the place where they really want you to put your finger is right on that bar. Has that little like translucent bar to swipe up. So you put your finger there, it scans, and then you swipe in one motion.
It should be fast enough that you don't even have to pause it. That you just swipe and it just opens.
Yeah. Now, do we think? Because I've been trying to figure this out for like a year, ever since we heard that Touch ID might be coming back. Do we think that it'll be an either or do you think it'll be? I think the sort of most Apple solution would be to register the first biometric that registers
you just sort of put your finger on the screen, look at the phone, and whichever one comes good first.
Yeah,
that's the one that you're is going to unlock your phone for you. That's what I found. Again, with that Huawei device, it kind of, I don't know if this is exactly how it worked. I don't remember, but it kind of felt like you put your finger on it and you'd look at it, and it sort of just took one or the other. It was seamless. You didn't know if it was like it was always the finger or it was always your face. It just sort of seemed to go between the two as and when it needed.
Yeah.
So
it absolutely should just be seamless. You should just pick up your phone and start using it without even knowing that you're unlocking it.
Yeah.
I think it would be funny if Apple had an option that that required both biometrics. If you could flip a switch and say, you need your face and you need your thumb.
Face Touch ID. You heard it here first.
Touch the Face ID.
Yeah, Dalva in the comments suggested Iris ID and Voice ID. Every time I see somebody suggesting eyeball ID, I always think about those sci-fi movies where they pull out people's eyeballs and take them around.
Demolition Man. They did that. That was a thing in Demolition Man. A notorious movie.
They did it in what was that? The Tom Cruise movie. I can't think of it.
Oh.
Where there were those people that saw the future.
Minority Report.
Yeah, that was it. Didn't they do that?
Well, Iris ID is something that Samsung's done in their phones, and it is, from what I understand, bad.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that would be seamless, but I don't know. Maybe that's something coming in the future. But Voice ID is tough because then you have to talk, and sometimes you're in a quiet place, like in a meeting or something, where you're not supposed to be on your phone, and you can't very well talk to it. So.
Yeah. And those impressionists, man, you got to watch out. They're
We all need to be able to goof off on our phones during meetings. This is what I'm doing.
I never.
That wasn't the best example.
But have you ever seen that movie Sneakers? My Voice is My Passport.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, it's a 90s cheesy classic, I think.
That was before my time. Never mind.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, mine too.
Everything's before your time, Stephen. You're a fetus. I'm actually, the more I think about it, the more excited I am about the potential return of Touch ID. Just more options. I think more options is always better.
Yeah, I do too. I think it gives you the potential for just an absolutely seamless experience.
And also, I can't stress this enough, to hear people stop complaining about it. I mean, I think it's a legitimate complaint, but there's some things where I personally just I don't care that there's not Touch ID on my iPhone 12 right now. It's not a personal bug for me. I get that it's going to be great for everybody else, but I'll be glad when it's one thing that people can stop complaining about. They'll find something else, but it'll be new at least.
Yeah. I guess you could always say if you like Touch ID so much, buy the iPhone SE, but that is, you're compromising in a lot of other areas compared to the 12.
And now, up until October, the iPhone SE really was the top of the line iPhone in a less expensive package, but now it is the step down iPhone in a less expensive package.
Well, it's the budget iPhone.
Yeah,
there are a lot of people that want an iPhone, but they don't. When I worked at the Apple Store, people would come in and they would say, I want an iPhone that works, but I don't need all the bells and whistles.
Yeah,
and that would be the one.
I describe it as the iPhone that I would recommend to both of my parents. That's I think is
well for your parents and well, you don't have kids yet, but for children. I mean, if you have a 10-year-old that you're buying an iPhone for, you're not going to buy them a 12 Pro. The SE is perfect for a tween or a young teenager who maybe it's their first expensive item that they need to be responsible for taking care of.
Yeah. So you don't want it to be that expensive in reality.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fairly easy to replace. Exactly. So, talking of biometrics and moving on at the same time, let's talk MacBooks. Among other major rumors that dropped this week for MacBooks, was one that I think a lot of us have expected, especially since Apple Silicon powered Macs have released. But Face ID is apparently being planned for future Macs.
I totally forgot about this rumor. And you said, like, moving on and speaking of biometrics and the Mac, and I was like, did someone announce like a fingerprint scanner for Mac that I just totally forgot about? And then
There is one. There is a fingerprint scanner.
Yeah.
I
completely brain farted, and yeah.
But yeah, there's a rumor that Apple is working on Face ID for new Macs. Now, it is apparently a ways off, but I don't think this is surprising to anybody. Is this surprising to either of you?
I'm surprised that the Mac's camera has enough pixels to recognize somebody's face, if that's what you mean.
Well, see, that's the thing. Future Macs, so we don't have to rely on that 720p camera. As awesome as the image signal processor apparently is, it's still awesome for only a 720p image. But yeah, I think I would imagine it's the whole shebang about.
I'm not that surprised. It literally kind of just popped into my head. The only thing I can think of is, and I think of this even with my Mac, which is I have a MacBook, but I don't take it anywhere because nobody's kind of going anywhere at the minute. But the rumor that we're talking about is a story from Mark Gurman today, mostly about new MacBook Airs coming possibly later this year. But then there was a few throwaway comments at the end to say, oh, by the way, Apple's working on Face ID for the Mac, but it's for the iMac, and that it had originally been planned in this year's iMac, which we expect will be like a total redesign, complete with an M1 or an Apple Silicon processor. But that Mac would come with Face ID. And I don't really see the point in the biometric security in a device that would never leave your house. Is that just me? Like, because an iMac is a desktop.
What about offices that have them?
Yeah, this is a good point, I guess. But
so
I don't know.
They're not always in private homes, and even if they are, people have roommates that aren't, their spouses or significant others. I mean, just roommates that they share rent with.
True.
You don't necessarily want them up in your business.
What are the more? Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
I was going to just to your point. I don't think it's that much of a surprise because it's, it's not like the iPhone with the notch or the iPad where you kind of need to work with the bezels. Yet the iMac is a big machine with a lot of room. So incorporating something that's quite a small physical feature like Face ID, I don't think it would take that much work on Apple's part. So it's I don't think it's that surprising. But yeah, I was just thinking about the functionality more than the kind of the technological. Does Apple have the wherewithal to do this? But
I mean, anything that makes it easier and faster for us to get into our devices while keeping other people out of our devices, I'm all for.
Yeah.
One of the features of macOS that I really like is the Apple Watch unlocking. It's super fast.
I love it.
And it works all the time. Now, Apple Watch unlocking and any biometric that would be linked to macOS, you actually have. Those only work when you're like waking from sleep or you're doing other things while using your computer, like looking at the password saved in Safari, or in some cases opening apps. Like 1Password now lets you unlock with the Apple Watch. That's great. But I don't, that's an Apple device, so Apple can trust it. I don't know that Apple would want to set the precedent of like an external device that you can plug in that could act as, say, Touch ID. Like, because you can't get Touch ID on an iMac right now. Yeah. There's no external Apple keyboard that has a Touch ID button. And the reason I bring this up is because, I think biometrics are a key technology for Apple, and so on an iMac, Face ID is the biometric that makes the most sense.
Right.
Or say right now, at least, especially with the lid so thin, Touch ID is that biometric for the laptops.
Yeah. I wonder, I'm just looking at my MacBook now. I wonder what they'll do with the Touch ID on the Mac. I guess it'll just stay, because the rumor is the touch bar will be replaced by physical buttons.
Yeah.
The pros. as Apple would call them, have. So I guess you would just leave it.
Yeah, you
there,
would just leave the Touch ID.
I think you're totally right that Face ID makes more sense because the iMac is the computer housed within the screen, and the keyboard is separate from that. So
yeah, and for and as to Touch ID on non-touch bar devices, we already have that in the MacBook Air.
Of course, yeah.
That doesn't have the touch bar. And speaking of not having the touch bar, let's go to I think the big rumor of the week. As far as I'm concerned, it's about the MacBook Pro. It's actually several rumors at once about the MacBook Pro. This is from Mark Gurman at Bloomberg again. And this is actually why I trust this. If this didn't come from Mark Gurman, I don't think I'd believe it because it sounds too much like Mac fan fiction. But it sounds like we're getting, and this is why I named the show this. It sounds like we're getting the MacBook Backtrack. This is completely wild to me. So I think
Mark Gurman, if you're talking about the touch bar, Mark Gurman and Huoming Chi, as I understand, have both said,
no touch bar in the next MacBook Pro.
No, yes, he did. Yeah, no, I'm reading the report right now. Yeah, Mark Gurman and Huoming Chi, which is, if John Prosser comes out and says it, then we have the trifecta, and it's
then that's the closest we can get to say it's definitely happening.
Yeah. But 2 out of 3 so far is pretty good,
and those 2 in particular. And so this is wild. So no touch bar.
Yep.
More ports, the SD card slot, and the thing we've been hearing about for a while: 14 and of course 16 inches.
And a very slight design tweak.
And a very slight.
It almost sounds like the iPhone 12's design tweak, where we've gone from the slightly rounded iPhones to a very right angle square phone, and it sounds like that they're going to take the curve out of the top and the bottom and make the Mac a kind of right angle flat on the top and the bottom as well.
Karen, I showed this on the show last week and I still have it right by me.
Your old MacBook Pro.
What is that?
When I say Stephen is a fetus, I'm not bullying. I'm speaking the truth. So this was my very first MacBook Pro. So this design is...
Does it even close all the way? It looks like it doesn't close all the way.
It doesn't. And look, you've got a spot over here where I've worn away, where I wore away the paint, I guess, or the
well-loved.
Yes, well-loved until with its, I think, 4 gigabytes of RAM that I had to add. But there was a time when that was a top-of-the-line machine. And so, maybe when they say flat sides and more iPad-ish, this is what we're talking about. We're going back to the PowerBook because that's what that's modeled after is the PowerBook G4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the new iMac is actually a translucent blue. I don't know if anybody told you that. So,
no, it's on its own articulating stand on a dome on a dome base, and it looks kind of like a flower. Some say like a daisy,
with a wood finished keyboard.
That's actually if Apple were going to dive back into retro designs, the daisy iMac is the one I would want to see. That's my personal favorite.
I'm gonna have to Google that because it sounds like another one from
Karen. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
When you say daisy, you're referring to the angle of the
it had the screen. It had the screen and then the articulating stand, and then it had the dome that it all sat on, and it had that great commercial. It looked actually to me, especially because the Apple Association, it looked more like the Pixar lamp.
I was just about to say, this is the G4. Is this the
the iMac G4?
That was the first thing that popped into my head as well, was the Pixar lamp. So
that's the retro design I would want Apple to go for. But
there must be Apple fanatics listening and watching who are having an absolute fit listening to me talk about devices that came out before the year 2000. That I'm sorry, I literally just
it's not there.
I got nothing. I'm sorry.
Bring back iPods.
Yeah.
Old man yells at cloud.
I remember. All right.
So slight design tweak.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a major overhaul. It just sounds like a squaring off of the top of them, which is a shame. I like the slight curve to the Mac, but if it means more battery life, then maybe people will enjoy that.
Bringing back the SD card seems like an odd choice to me.
Yeah,
but
it's a really
the right choice.
Yeah, it's the same as the getting rid of the touch bar. And even, I guess, if you go back further, the getting rid of the butterfly keyboard in favor of the Magic Keyboard, it does seem like Apple is kind of cannibalizing like a few of its earlier ideas, and Joe, like you said, backtracking to what it thinks people are sort of clamoring for.
Well, we're all in agreement that the MagSafe charger coming back is I
want it.
Big plus.
I think a lot of people are assuming that it's going to be some kind of USB-C thing, but no, I think it's going to be a standalone charger. I wouldn't be surprised if you could still charge over USB-C and like at least the big. Well, actually, no. The current step up non M1 13-inch has two Thunderbolt ports on each side. I could imagine that's going to be the same for the 14-inch and 16-inch.
Yeah.
So I think you'll still be able to charge over those ports, but the MagSafe is going to be, hey, we brought this back. Don't you love it? Because I will love it.
Have you seen the meme? I think maybe Ben Mayo from 9 to 5 Mac shared like an over like the top shot of a Mac, and then like a huge MagSafe puck like attached over like where the Apple logo would go. It's like Apple's bringing MagSafe back. It's like,
no.
But yeah, I don't remember the report off the top of my head, but I believe Mark Gurman said that it would be roughly very similar to MagSafe of old, and that it would be, Joe, like you said, a standalone charger with the magnetic disconnection. But that it would allow for faster charging. I think that
wouldn't surprise me at all.
An improvement. But I think that's less surprising, given that Apple brought not MagSafe back, but it brought MagSafe to the iPhone. That's certainly less of a surprise than Karen. I think you're right. The SD slot to me is wild, but I know that like a lot of pros who use these computers, like my old MacBook has an SD slot, and I would use it for music and stuff. Even just to have that expansion slot without having to carry a hard drive around is really good. And I know a lot of pros who shoot movies or videos or do music and have a lot of these cards that are going in and out of cameras and stuff really value that connectivity. So it does sound like, it's weird. This was actually reported by quite an obscure site right at the start of January. And we all sort of ignored it because nobody ever heard of them. And then Mark Gurman came out and it was like, oh, this was right the whole time. So
I don't know. I just feel like pros also are going to have hubs because they have 8 million things that they need to plug into their computers. So
I know I do. But on the go, like, I think the idea would be, this is a machine you can take with you on the go, especially the smaller one. And like, sure, a lot of people just plug a MacBook Pro into a dock or into a external monitor, or just keep it on their desk and they never take it anywhere. But for those that do, like, this is my big camera, and it has 2 SD card slots. These cameras and cameras like them are used by pros and enthusiasts all around the world. And I think just, if you're going to call a machine a pro and gear it towards creative professionals, having an SD card slot still is great. Unless you were, and actually, this is something I've wanted for a while. Apple, if you're willing to work with, say, Sony and Nikon and Canon and other camera manufacturers to bring AirDrop to third-party devices, so we have excellent, reliable Wi-Fi based image and video transfer wirelessly between, Macs and iPhones and iPads, that would be the solution. Then you don't have to bother with the SD card.
I don't see Apple letting that go to third party, because that's putting so much reliance on third party companies to keep that working smoothly. And if they drop the ball, then it makes AirDrop look bad, which by extension makes Apple look bad. Apple doesn't like to do that.
It would be exquisite though, Joe. I'm with you.
It would be great.
It would be
a pipe dream, sadly. I
just don't.
Yeah. Look, I'm the man that dreams big while knowing that it's never going to happen. I want it. I want it. Just I want it. But
even just to be able to AirDrop things to friends that deign to have other phones besides iPhones.
Who does that? Who has? Do you guys have friends
Nobody
that
that I work with, but I do have a couple of friends that refuse to get on the iPhone bandwagon.
Yeah, and
I mean, I can't even text them half the time. Texting just doesn't even work.
yeah, this is
Forget about
this is
sending
the
a
reality
picture.
we live in. You know, so basically, what we're saying here is iMessage for Android and AirDrop on third-party devices. That's what I'm.
iMessage for Android happened this week. I don't know if you saw it.
It is such a horrific workaround.
It's pretty intense. Yeah. So there's if you don't know,
Aaron's not a
there's
big fan.
a new app called Beeper, that promises to bring kind of all your chats from all the major platforms under one roof. So your WhatsApps, your Facebook Messengers, Telegram, Signal, all that stuff, and most importantly, it seems iMessage. But yeah, if you want to use it on a like a Windows device or Android, you either need to have an always on Mac and like an always online Mac running iMessage to act as a bridge, or if you don't have an iPhone,
they'll send you an iPhone.
People will send you a jailbroken iPhone 4S.
So ridiculous.
As part of, I think I don't know if it's like part. It's a $10 a month subscription, but I don't know if the iPhone comes as part of that or is like an extra fee. But yeah, the founder, Eric, I think his name is, literally tweeted he had like just a picture of like a box just full of jailbroken iPhones under his desk.
Like 50 of them.
So yeah, I iMessage for Android that doesn't involve being sent a jailbroken iPhone 4S.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that app. It's called Beeper, right?
Yep, Beeper.
I think about Beeper, and I think, this is the app I've been wanting forever, but I don't want it to be a third-party app. This is what I want the Messages app to be. So it's got iMessage, but then it maybe could integrate with third-party message apps, and you have one, and maybe even email, and you have one message center. Like, I think back a while back, BlackBerry did this. They had, I think it was called the BlackBerry Message Center, and it had like BBM and it had email, and you had tabs for each of them.
God, I miss BBM.
That's crazy. When my son was in high school, he was in the leadership for a youth group, and all the officers had iPhones except for one, and they literally told that one guy, you either get an iPhone or you're out of leadership. And he got an iPhone because because it would mess up their group chats because of the one Android phone.
That is just, that to me is the pinnacle of blue bubble superiority.
Yeah, they won.
I used to think BlackBerry Messenger was amazing, but if you wanted to add somebody, you had to give them like a 12-digit alphanumeric code to be like, hey, add my BBM.
Like a Nintendo friend code at this point. It's like becoming friends on Nintendo Online. So going back to Macs for a second, there are other rumors concerning the MacBook Air, that it's going to get some big updates. So MagSafe might be coming back to the MacBook Air as well.
Yeah, I mean, Gum didn't mention that specifically, but it sort of seems like if Apple would bring it back to the Pro, but not the Air. Like, I don't think Apple kind of is about that kind of lack of continuity across devices. So
yeah,
if it does come to the Pro, as we're hearing, the Air, it kind of seems like maybe not straight away, but it sort of seems like the natural progression that like it would come to the Air as well. But yeah, we heard a lot about the MacBook Air today, but as well.
Am I reading this right? Apple is considering a larger MacBook Air as well. Another version.
So one of the great thing about Mark Gurman's reports is there's always kind of one headline, but then there are like just tidbits of throwaway information that he leaves in that are like equally like magnificent headlines and stories in themselves. So yeah, one such one in this recent report is that Apple had and was testing or was considering a 15-inch MacBook Air, and has decided, Gurman didn't close the door on it. He said they've decided not to go forward with it for now, but certainly left it open, at least from his understanding, that one day there might be a 15-inch MacBook Air.
I think that's so interesting because one of the more consistent features of Apple is that size equals bigger size equals increased price. And of course, the 15-inch MacBook Air would cost more than a 13-inch MacBook Air because, of course it would. Apple, that's exactly how Apple operates. But it wouldn't cost like, I doubt a 15-inch MacBook Air would cost more than a 14-inch MacBook Pro just on the outset.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know?
guess that's the other strange wrinkle is that, as per the MacBook Pro rumors, the kind of the messaging is that Apple is going to go to a 14 and a 16 inch, or it has a 16 inch.
Yeah.
So it's going to go to the 14 and the 16 instead of like the 13 and 15.
Previously 15.
Yeah. So would Apple then have a Pro that was 14 and 16 and an Air that was 13? And I guess you would have a 13, a 14, a 15, and a 16. Like it
That's so
would
weird.
would look good in lineup photos if you put
Yeah.
them all in a row. But yeah, they're definitely one of the, like I said, one of the tidbits that Gurman just sort of like the breadcrumbs that he just leaves in his reports. Yeah, 15-inch version was considered, certainly not coming anytime soon.
Yeah,
but
I don't.
maybe.
I feel like the big advantage to the Air is price and portability.
Really comes in the name.
And if you go right, and if you go with a larger size, then it's just not quite as portable.
Mm-hmm. And as Joe said, the price would probably go up too.
And the price would certainly go up. Yeah.
I would say at least $200 on tack $200 on the starting price for the same specs.
Yeah.
Right.
The only,
I don't know.
It's more battery though.
Yeah, certainly. It's it'd be cool.
It's a wild one. I can see a case for it. Like you don't need the power of a MacBook Pro, but you want a bigger screen, and you know,
yeah, it would just be for, I guess, for maybe like watching Netflix or
Netflix or
students. Students are always a big audience for the MacBook Air.
Yeah, I think for me, like if I was doing, research or something like that, I'd want a whole second monitor because I just like to have that much more space. So in terms of research, I don't know how big that would be for me, but yeah.
Although I just got a 15-inch MacBook Air as an upgrade from my 13
or Pro,
and it's a 15-inch Pro, and it's pretty spectacular just in terms of the like the size. Like it's only 2 inches, but of course because it's diagonally, as with any display, it really is a big increase. And I really value the increased size. Yeah,
you hear, it's only 2 inches bigger, and you don't think about that as being just a massive upgrade, but it is. It really is.
On the screen, it is.
Yeah.
You can see that on. You can imagine that on phones because phones are so small compared to standard computers, but. Yeah, you don't think about it on laptops, but it really does make a difference. I think it makes a difference in iPads, 11 to 12.9 inch. It's 2 inches there.
Yeah. Craig in the chat makes an interesting point. You remember, of course, that when the MacBook Air first came out, there was an 11-inch and a 13-inch because it was the small MacBook, as it were. So you could even reduce that, the bezels like they've done with kind of all the models, and you could have a 12-inch MacBook Air. Like we had a 12-inch MacBook, but it was kind of its own sort of, that was the first butterfly keyboard, wasn't it? And the first no ports and stuff.
Well,
so
maybe it had the one USB-C port, and it was a terrible Intel mobile chip, but now we have the M1 that exists. And a lot of people, like one of the rumors last year that wasn't at any point very reliable, I thought, but it was that we were going to see a new 12-inch MacBook and it would be the first Mac with M1.
Yes, that did happen. No, yeah.
Well, yeah, that was the rumor, but and I mean, we did kind of see it because the one of the other features of the original, well, I say the original, the one port MacBook was that it didn't have a fan. Yeah, and now the MacBook Air doesn't have a fan.
No, sure.
It's ironic.
So maybe if as the name if portability is the name of the game, then maybe, as Craig says, like going down to 12 is what people want as opposed to up to 15. But yeah, possibly one day 15-inch MacBook Air. I certainly would. Yeah, like I said, 15. It makes a big difference. So I think there'd definitely be a market for it. And because you've got the more expensive, there's a better differentiation between the price of the Air and the price of the Pro now. There is kind of room to slot that in. So
I think in terms of power, I do think we're going to see M1 variants for these new MacBook Pros. Like I would say X. I would call them X variants where they have more power versus the standard M1. And so I would bet that every MacBook Air carries the standard M chip, and it's the Pros that go with the X.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I was just going back over Mark's report to check what you were saying there, and what I told you about the MagSafe was a total lie. So Gurman explicitly said that MagSafe would be in this new MacBook Air, and I poo-pooed that and said, "Oh, it probably will." Mark definitely said MagSafe in the new MacBook Air, so please ignore everything I said previously about that. But yes, a next generation version of the company's in-house Mac processors is also what he says. So yeah, whether that's an M1X or
an M2.
Yeah.
Or an M13.
13.
Just get it up to date. Just screw it. Just get it up to date with the H series.
Mm-hmm.
With the unlucky 13.
Oh. All right. We have come down to the end of our hour. I want to say thanks to everybody who tuned in live and chatted along with us. It's always fun to see you guys in the comments. Always very insightful, and you inspire a lot of discussion. I want to say thanks to people who are going to listen to this a little bit later in the week, not live, in their podcatcher of choice. Of course, I want to thank Jim Metzendorf, our editor extraordinaire, who always makes us sound wonderful. Jim, you're a hero. You're the real hero here, Jim. I want to thank Stephen for coming on this week's episode of the show, and Karen, as always, for joining me. It's always great talking to both of you, and now we got to do it in front of people.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it was a fun show this week. Lots of good Apple rumors to go through, and
Chris says it's his favorite show of the week. Thank you very much, Chris.
Well,
I hope it doesn't mean favorite iMore show of the week, because we only do one.
If you're seeing multiple iMore shows in a week, you should probably tell us, because that's something we should deal with. we need to get contact some lawyers and get that involved. But until next week, thanks everybody. This has been the iMore Show.